Welcome to my channel. Please hit like, share, and subscribe. This is the Motown Chronicles, Part 4, Diana Ross. The morning after the Copacabana triumph, the Supremes were scheduled to pose for publicity photos in the club's lobby. They stood in front of a poster with their picture on it and the accompanying words, "The Copa reigns supremes." After the session, Barry pulled Florence aside. "Not bad, Blondie. That little line you dropped onto the last song," he told her. "Real funny stuff." Flo recalled that she wasn't sure if he was complimenting her or being sarcastic. "Diane loved it," he continued. "Oh, she did she?" Florence said. "Yeah, we're going to keep it in the act. Maybe give Mary a line. But listen, next time I want you to say..." "Now you just hold it right there, Barry," Florence interrupted him. "My way worked. I'll do it my way, or I'll come up with a new way." "Fine, suit yourself," Barry said. Then he walked away shaking his head. That night, Diana made the group introductions as she always did. When she sat on the end as Florence ballad, "She's the quiet one," Flo interjected, "Honey, that's what you think." Again, her delivery and timing couldn't have been better. The place erupted in shouts and applause. "All right, Flo, you tell her. That's what she thinks." Diana looked out at Barry in the audience. He wasn't smiling, and neither was she. According to popular belief among gaudy intimates, Barry hit it big at the gaming tables in San Juan and won tens of thousands of dollars over the course of the first few nights. But then, later in the week, Gordy began to lose heavily. The theory was that a well-known racketeer had hired a card shark to swindle Barry. First, by letting him win big and thereby luring him to bet even greater sums of money, and then losing his proverbial shirt. Eventually, Gordy was dropping $75,000 a night and was in the hole for many hundreds of thousands of dollars by the end of the Supreme's engagement. If this is true, exactly to whom Barry was indebted is a mystery, and whether the party really did have underworld connections is an open question. Diana was totally oblivious to any of Barry's business problems, since Gordy's policy was always ignorance is bliss, where she was concerned. "Barry likes to gamble," she told a friend. "I think it's good that he has something to take his mind off business. Everyone needs to relax sometimes." A former booking agent for General Artists Corporation, the Madison Avenue agency that organized the Supremes nightclub appearances and, with Motown officials, planned the group's itinerary, would only speak about this subject anonymously. "The one thing I recall of Puerto Rico was all the thugs in dark suits sitting in the audience. These menacing-looking creeps seemed to be following the Supremes from stop to stop. It had started just before the Copa gig, and in Puerto Rico, their number had multiplied. Some of the more sophisticated members of the Motown entourage had strong suspicions about Barry's dealings with several rather ominous-looking characters. This particular booking agent recalled approaching Barry on the third night of the Puerto Rico San Juan engagement and asking him very directly, "Hey man, what's with all these thugs in the house? It's bad for business and for image too." Barry snapped, "Those aren't thugs, man. Those are my gambling buddies." When the agent responded, "Man, those fellas are not your buddies," Barry shot him a mind your business look and walked away. The next night, the Supremes had 3 curtain calls and left the stage to a strong ovation. Backstage, the scene was loud, noisy, and disorganized, as well-wishers descended upon the girls before they even had a chance to change from their stage costumes into street clothes. While all of the attention was focused on the Supremes, three of Gordy's white gambling buddies had cornered him next to one of the equipment rooms. "Hey man, how'd you like the show?" Gordy asked one of the men. The visitor mumbled something, and Gordy, his brow sweating, began looking nervous and uncertain about what to do next. A few more words were spoken, and then suddenly the four men adjourned into the equipment room and shut the door behind them. They were in there for about 15 minutes when people began asking for Berry. By now, Florence had changed into her street clothes and was watching the whole scene with great curiosity because, apparently, she had seen Berry and his friends slip away into the back room. An aide knocked on the door, went into the small room, probably told Berry that someone was looking for him, and quickly came out. Instead of closing the door behind him, he left it ajar. By now, most people had cleared out of the backstage area and had begun congregating in the girls' dressing rooms, where chilled champagne was being served and press photos were being taken. Gordy, his two bodyguards, and three gambling buddies continued their discussion for about another 20 minutes. Recalled the booking agent. "I came back looking for Barry, and then I remembered he was in this meeting. So I walked down the hall, and standing there next to the partly open door was none other than Florence Ballard. So I walked behind her, tapped her on the shoulder, and she just about jumped out of her skin. 'What the F is wrong with you?' she shouted at me." Just then, one of the men suddenly came bounding out of the room. He looked at Florence suspiciously. When asked what she was doing standing there, Florence said she was simply waiting to ask Barry a question. She swore that she hadn't been eavesdropping, even though that is certainly how it appeared. No one other than those present knows what was being discussed in that meeting, and no one knows what, if anything, Florence Ballard overheard, or even if she understood what she was hearing. But from that night on, Florence Ballard would claim that she had something on Berry Gordy, and that was a threat that he didn't like hearing from anyone. After Puerto Rico, there was a marked difference in Barry's attitude towards Florence. Florence would say years later that she never knew what to expect from Barry. Either he would be extremely friendly to her, buying gifts for her that he had not purchased for the other two, or he would go out of his way to embarrass her. When the Supremes were booked into the Copacabana again from March 17 to the 23rd at double their original salary, $5,000 a week, Florence began complaining of a nagging flu. A tour of West Germany and Scandinavia was planned, and Florence's doctor recommended that Barry cancel it. Reluctantly, he did. After a week, Gordy scheduled a recording session. An album of spiritual songs was being planned as a tribute to his recently deceased sister, and the Supremes were scheduled to record. Diana, Mary, and Barry waited for Flo for over an hour, and when she didn't show up, Barry became disgusted. "But she's sick," Mary said, trying to defend Florence. "I talked to her doctor. She ain't sick no more. She's lazy. That's her problem," Barry shot back. "And not only that," Diana added impatiently, "but it's costing us money and I'm tired of it." The Supremes were required to pay for their own recording sessions. The cost of recording time was automatically deducted from the group's royalties. One of Barry's aides remembered a Motown staff meeting that took place in February 1966. Barry called together a bunch of his closer confidants, Gil Askey, Maurice King, Harvey Fuqua, and a few others, and raised the simple question, what would happen if we replaced Florence at the Copa? We all looked at him as if he were crazy. He started chewing on his tongue like he does whenever he's in thought, and he asked, Is Diane good enough to carry the show regardless of who she's singing with? Everyone had to agree that yes, Diane could be put with any two girls and people would still be impressed. Berry seemed relieved. He said that he was pulling Flo out temporarily, that she would return after the Copa. He was hoping to teach her a lesson. After the meeting, Berry told Diana that he would find a new third girl for the group. Don't worry about it, he said. All you have to do is sing. But Diana wasn't that much of a pushover, said the gaudy aide. Look, I want to know who the hell I'm singing with, she told him. Whoever this girl is, she has to meet with my approval if she's going to be sharing my stage. Harvey Fuqua, the producer of the tribute album to Berry's sister, suggested that Marlene Barrow should join the act since she had already worked with Mary on the Symphony project. Diana and Berry agreed that the attractive and talented Marlene would be a suitable replacement for Florence, and that Mary would be the one to teach her the routines. Mary obediently went along with the plan, venturing no opinion one way or the other. The next thing I knew, I was working night and day at Mary's house trying to learn the Supreme Stage Act, Marlene Barrow recalled. I was also given a budget to go to Saks Fifth Avenue to buy expensive clothes because I ordinarily didn't dress like they dressed. Then I had to be fitted into the stage costumes. I was basically Florence's size, though I wasn't as tall. When I was finally ready, Diana, Mary, and I appeared at a debutante party at the Grosse Pointe Country Club in Detroit. Then, the next day, a white limousine pulled up in front of my parents' home. My mom and dad were everyday folks, so all of my neighbors came out onto their porches to see what was going on. It was Berry's car, coming to pick me up to take me to the airport. This, to me, was like a dream. We went to Philadelphia, Ohio, and finally into Boston, where we played a small club as dress rehearsal for the Copa. Basically, I never saw much of Diana, Barrow said. I don't remember ever rehearsing with her, only Mary. All of my dealings with Diana were on stage. Berry flew into Boston to see how the show was faring. He was impressed with it, Barrow said. I was nervous, wondering if the audience would question who I was. I was told to say Florence had the flu, and that was that. The audience was appreciative, and Diana, of course, was wonderful, working harder than ever. There was a standing ovation. It was the most beautiful experience for me. Now that one of the girls had been replaced successfully, Berry became more confident than ever that Diana Ross was the focus of the Supremes and that tolerating any aggravation from Florence or even Mary was not very necessary. But then Berry's plans for the Supremes' Copa lineup were thrown into turmoil by Jules Podell, the owner of the club. When Podell discovered that Florence would not be on stage, he became angry. He enjoyed Florence tremendously, remembered that she was a crowd pleaser during the last engagement, and made it clear that he wanted the three original Supremes. If Berry could not guarantee the presence of all three, the commitment would be canceled. Both Berry and Diana were quite amazed by this turn of events. Berry had no choice but to call on Flo. With Diana, Mary, and Florence on stage, the Copa engagement turned out to be a great success. But Flo never knew how popular she was with Jules Podell. No one ever told her.